You've probably seen a European truck somewhere, maybe on a documentary about cross-channel shipping, maybe on a ferry loading dock. That flat-faced, almost architectural cab, no hood, no nose, just a wall of glass and steel. And if you looked closely, there were two names on the door, two drivers, both presumably sleeping somewhere in that cab while the truck sits waiting for the next leg. Then you think about the American trucks you've seen your whole life. Long hood, one driver, a small sleeper box bolted behind the cab, one name on the paperwork. You probably assumed the difference was cultural. Europeans travel together. Americans go it alone. Maybe it's a union thing. Maybe it's company policy. Maybe European drivers just don't want to be lonely. But that's not even close to the real answer. The real answer starts with a tape measure. Specifically, who is measuring what and where they start the tape. And when you understand that, you will understand why the shape of a truck's nose, whether it has one or not, determines whether a second person is sleeping in the back, and why a decision made in 1956 about American highway design locked in a truck shape that is still on the road 70 years later. The answer has three parts. Most people only ever hear the first one. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. The obvious answer is driving hours. And it's not wrong, it's just incomplete in a way that matters. In Europe, a truck driver is legally limited to 9 hours of driving per day under EC Regulation 561 of 2006. That can be extended to 10 hours, no more than twice per week. After 4.5 hours of driving, a 45-minute break is mandatory. Weekly, the limit is 56 hours. Across 2 weeks, 90 hours total. These are hard limits, enforced across 27 countries. In America, the rules are different. Property-carrying drivers can drive 11 hours within a 14-hour window, with a 10-hour off-duty period before the clock resets. The mandatory break is 30 minutes, required only after 8 hours of continuous driving. So the math looks simple. European drivers have fewer hours available per day, so on a long international route, 2 drivers share the load. One drives while the other rests in the back. The truck keeps moving. Simple. But here's what that explanation misses. If driving hours were the whole story, American trucking companies could just assign 2 drivers to the same truck tomorrow and get the same benefit. Some do. It is called team driving, and it exists in America for high-priority freight, but it's relatively rare. And when you look at why it's rare in America and why it became standard practice in Europe, the driving hours regulation is actually only the starting point. Here's the problem. A 2-driver system only works if both drivers can actually rest properly while the other one drives. That requires a cab with real sleeping space, a proper bunk, ideally 2 of them, enough height to stand up, enough room so 2 people can share the space for a week without one of them sleeping with their knees against the dashboard. Most American long-haul trucks do not have that. The sleeper compartment behind the cab is functional, but it is a single driver space. It was designed for one person, not because American manufacturers could not build something larger, but because the truck shape itself does not leave room for it. And why does the truck shape not leave room? Because of the nose. But that is only part of the story. The real reason the noses are different goes deeper than anything to do with sleeping. Here is the thing about a truck's nose. It does not carry cargo. It does not haul freight. It just gets in the way. The engine is in there, yes, but the engine could go somewhere else, beneath the cab floor, for instance. Truck engineers have known this since at least the 1930s. The question was never whether you could remove the nose. The question was whether you had a reason to. In Europe, a reason arrived in 1996. EU Directive 9653 EC set the maximum total length for an articulated vehicle at 18.75 meters across all member states. Total length. The cab, the trailer, everything. One measurement, starting at the front of the vehicle and ending at the back of the trailer. If your truck has a 2-meter nose, that is 2 meters taken from your cargo. On an 18.75-meter vehicle, 2 meters of engine hood means 2 meters less trailer. 2 meters less trailer means less freight per trip. Less freight per trip means less revenue per kilometer. And on the scale of a European freight fleet, that cost is enormous. So European manufacturers removed the nose. They put the cab directly over the front axle. The engine went beneath the floor, accessed by tilting the entire cab forward on a pivot. The design is called cab over engine, often abbreviated COE, and it became essentially universal in European heavy trucking. Volvo, Scania, Mercedes, DAF, MAN. Every major European truck manufacturer builds cab-over-engine models exclusively for their heavy-duty lineup. Here is the consequence that nobody mentions when they explain this. When you remove the nose and put the cab directly over the axle, you suddenly have a tall, flat-fronted box. Inside that box, with the engine no longer occupying the floor space beneath you, the layout opens up, and you have room to build upward. European truck cabs routinely offer interior standing heights of more than 2 meters. They have full upper and lower berths, a small kitchen, and a refrigerator, space that feels, if not like an apartment, at least like a decent hotel room for one. The sleeping space in a European truck exists because the nose is gone, and the nose is gone because of a cargo length regulation. Nobody sat down and said, let's design a truck that sleeps 2 drivers. They said, let's maximize cargo within the legal length, and the sleeping space was the side effect. But this still leaves an unanswered question. If Americans had simply written their length regulations the same way, would American trucks look like European ones? Almost certainly yes. So why did they not? Here it gets genuinely strange, because the answer is 1956, and it comes down to a highway system that was not designed for trucks at all. In 1956, President Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act into law. It created 41,000 miles of interstate highway, the largest public works project in American history, designed primarily for military movement and for civilian automobile traffic. Freight trucks would use those highways too, and the trucks that would use them were already designed. The conventional layout, with a long hood, the engine forward, and the cab set back, had been standard in American freight for decades. The infrastructure that maintained those trucks included the depots, the parts suppliers, the mechanic training, and the entire ecosystem of American commercial trucking. It was all built around that design. When the federal length regulations were written for the new interstate system, they measured the trailer. A 53-foot trailer was the same length, whether the cab had a 6-foot hood or no hood at all. The cab length was not counted against the cargo allowance the way the EU would later count it. This was not an accident or an oversight. It was simply a reflection of the trucks that already existed and the industry that had built them. There was no economic penalty for keeping the nose, and there were real reasons to keep it. The long hood provides direct engine access without tilting the cab. A mechanic can open the hood on the side of a highway and reach the engine components without specialized equipment. That matters when a truck breaks down in Wyoming at 3 in the morning and the nearest dealer is 200 miles away. The conventional design also put a substantial mass of metal between the driver and a head-on collision. Before modern crash structures were developed, this was a genuine safety argument that fleet buyers took seriously. By the 1980s and 1990s, when Europe was writing its harmonized length directive, American truck design was already locked in for 40 years. Dealership networks, parts logistics, maintenance training, driver familiarity, all of it was built around the conventional layout. And here's the detail that surprises most people. The trucks that American drivers call normal, the ones with the long hood and the single sleeper box, would be effectively impossible to operate legally on most European roads. Not because of their engines or their axles, because of their nose. The total length of an American conventional truck with a standard 53-foot trailer significantly exceeds the EU's 18.75-meter limit. two completely different solutions answered the same problem. One was shaped by a 1956 American highway decision. One was shaped by a 1990s European measurement rule. Both paths were locked in long before anyone was thinking about whether two drivers could sleep in the back. But understanding why the cabs look different still does not fully explain why two-driver operation became the economic standard in Europe, rather than just the regulatory possibility. That explanation requires one more piece, and it involves a device about the size of a credit card. The device is called a tachograph. It records every minute of a driver's day when the vehicle was moving, at what speed, and crucially, whether the driver was on duty, off duty, on a break, or in the sleeper berth. It stores all of that data on a tamper-evident smart card that the driver carries personally. The European Union required digital tachographs for new heavy vehicles in 2006. At any roadside inspection across 27 countries, an enforcement officer can pull that card and reconstruct the previous 28 days of the driver's activity in minutes. The data cannot be altered without leaving forensic evidence. Fines for violations are substantial. In Germany, a serious hours of service breach can result in a penalty of up to 15,000 euros. Here is what this changes. Under analog systems, creative record keeping was possible. Under digital tachographs, it essentially is not. The hours limits became real limits, not theoretical ones, and real limits change economic behavior. On a solo driver's card, a United Kingdom to Turkey route, approximately 3,500 kilometers, takes 7 to 9 days at legal driving hours. The truck is parked legally for roughly half of every 24 hours. With two drivers, the math changes entirely. The resting driver can take their rest period while the vehicle is in motion, provided they are not in the driving seat. The moving truck qualifies as a valid rest environment. So while one driver is behind the wheel, the other is legally accumulating rest hours in the bunk behind them. When the first driver's time runs out, the second takes over, refreshed, legal, and documented on their card. The team completes the United Kingdom to Turkey route in 4 to 5 days. The truck is moving for roughly 18 to 20 hours out of every 24. The economics are direct, nearly double the distance covered per week, with cargo arriving faster, the truck returning faster, and more loads completed per month. For international routes exceeding 1,500 kilometers, a two-driver team typically more than recovers the cost of paying two drivers through faster turnaround. And the sleeping space to make it work? Already built into the KAB. The EU length regulation demanded the nose be removed. The nose being removed made room for two bunks. The Volvo FH and Scania S-Series high roof cabs already offer standing height, proper berths, and enough livable space for two people on a week-long run across 12 countries. The entire system locks together. And here's the part that should catch you off guard. You have been on the receiving end of this system. You just did not see where it was coming from. So here's where you actually land after all of this. You looked at a European truck and thought you were seeing a cultural preference, maybe a labor agreement, maybe just a different way of doing things. But what you were actually looking at was a 1996 measurement rule about total vehicle length, which removed the nose to save cargo space, which opened up 2 meters of cab height, which gave engineers room to build proper sleeping quarters for two people, which made it physically possible to run two drivers on international routes, which became economically rational when digital tachographs made driving hours limits genuinely enforceable across 27 countries, which made a UK to Turkey run in 4 days instead of 9. Every layer produced the next one. And the American truck, parked next to it on that ferry, long hood, single sleeper, one driver, tells the same story in reverse. A 1956 highway system that measured the trailer and not the cab. An industrial ecosystem that locked in around that measurement. A design that optimized for solo driver economics, roadside repair, and an infrastructure that assumed the driver would stop, rest, and start again in the morning. Same cargo, same destination. Two completely different answers to the same problem, shaped by decisions made decades apart. Next time you see a flat-faced truck, you will notice what is missing: the nose. And now you will know exactly what that missing nose means, who is sleeping in the space it left behind, and why. And if you think the shape of a truck's nose explains a lot, wait until we get into why European trains run on a different track width than American ones. That decision was made in the 1800s. Both continents are still paying for it today.